Hi, I'm Owen from Rask Australia. Thanks for tuning in to the Rask Network.
Before we get into today's show, there are a few things we have to go over.
Firstly, what you're about to hear and see is limited to general information only. It's not personal financial advice like you get from a financial planner. Also, it's important to remember that past performance is not indicative of future performance. That means that anything that's happened in the past, or we say today, is not necessarily going to reflect what happens in the future. Lastly, please consider that any of the guests or myself are featuring on this program may have a financial interest in some of the products or shares mentioned. That's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed today's program.
So when I saw this opportunity come through to speak to you about the business, I was like, yes, we've got to jump at this. So an excuse to come up to Wang and get the tour around town. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you will get to see more than you hear. So I'd encourage you to go and watch it if you are interested in the conversation. We'll be talking about the business, about buying, selling furniture, retail. We're recording here in the warehouse, which is incredible. It's just behind us here. We're looking down on it. So we'll be talking about all that. And one of the things that people like to hear, mate, when we talk on the show is like the journey, but also kind of like what makes certain industries or businesses tick and what is the key, I guess, to unlocking growth in businesses. But this business goes back a long, long way. So can you take us back to your old man and the origin story and how it came to be?
Yeah, well, so the old man was sort of born and bred in Bundalong, just sort of outside of Yarrawonga there, and they was sort of settled land there back in the late 1800s. And none of the boys, or he had a couple of brothers and sisters, none of them really wanted to take on the family farm. He was a stock agent. Met Mum, they went to Finley, set up a stock agency sort of there. Mum hated Finley, wanted to come back to Wang. She was a Wang girl. Mm-hmm. They came back to Wang. Mum's father was a New Zealand guy, come out after the war, had a massive panel beating shop here in Wangaratta, so he was quite successful there. And he talked Dad into, or he bought a tow truck and removals business because he wanted the tow truck, and then gave Dad off the removals business. So that sort of kick-started him in the removals game with trucks and stuff like that. So yeah, they would gather up furniture people would leave behind in their moves, you know, like a couch or whatever. And back in the day, the new furniture wasn't what it is today. It was, you were dealing with a lot of secondhand. If you were starting off as a young family, you probably didn't have much at all. Furniture was expensive. He would gather it up and then just started realising he had a lot, used his auctioneer background, and then would auction it off every month out of a site in town where he had his removal depot, and probably realised that there was probably more money and benefit in doing that.
So he would get this old furniture from the houses as people moved on, and then...
Yeah, people just, I don't want it anymore. Can you get rid of it? You just keep it and then on sell it rather than chuck it out. And then so he started doing that. Then after, when he realised it was pretty good, he would go down to Melbourne to the auctions. There's one in Swan Street, Drills of Swan Street, I think it's still there. In Richmond, he'd go down there, buy up a lot, drive it all back up, display it, sell it, and then just did that for a few years, and then started buying new furniture as factories in Melbourne started up. And there was a bit of a heyday through the late 70s, 80s and 90s where furniture factories were everywhere in Melbourne, in those sort of Craigieburn, Campbellfield areas. It was just big gaming sofas and timber furniture. Then not so much anymore with the imports, but yeah, would bring it all back.
So McPhails started, what's the date that it actually was incepted?
1969 was the removals sort of the original business with when they bought that. And then it was probably more in the 1973, 74, straight into the furniture as it is. It's not too much different to what it was.
So can you take us through from say like the mid to late 90s through to when you got involved in the business, and then maybe if you can weave in your background a bit there as well?
Yeah, so I was a bit of a late addition to the family. I got two brothers. Jason, he's 21 years older than me, and then Casey, who's my current business partner, he is 17 years older than me. So I was born in 1990. They were born in the early 70s. So they were both real estate agents. from about 91, had an agency in Wangaratta for about 4 or 5 years together. And then Casey went off and worked with mum and dad in the furniture business. And then shortly after he started working with dad got cancer and died pretty quickly. So it was probably like 3 months. And then there was obviously a bit of turmoil with that. I was only 6 years old at the time. So then Casey sort of brought me up a lot of the time, like they kept the business going. Mum was running the business. It was probably tough times back then. I actually don't know how they managed to do it, but as a 6-year-old, you sort of just go through it. And then I went down to Scotch College in 2003 in year 7. There sort of wasn't a lot here. Everyone was pretty busy with work, so it's probably an easier choice to go to boarding school for me.
Was that hard though?
Well, I didn't really make the choice, when you're 12. But I probably enjoyed it a lot down there. It was great being a boarder. When you go down there, you're a fair way behind coming from a country school going into that type of school. So I was in probably every special class you could think of. But you grow up, like I would definitely send my kids down there again. I think what you just learn a whole different perspective on life and the way of doing things. And you probably see, like in Wangaratta, sure, there's like people have a lot or money or whatever, or they do things the way they do, but you probably get a more open idea. You can have this because you've seen people, like there's people that I went to school with, their family's probably worth $500 million,
Yeah.
Like they came from nothing, So there is the opportunity that you can do that, and you probably see that. Whereas in Wang, you probably think, oh, there's a rich guy over there. I don't know, he's had the family money, you can't do it, or you can do it, but you can only get, a couple of million under your sleeve.
Yeah.
That's where you can tap out, whereas you can really do whatever you want.
Yeah, you just get that perspective, I guess.
Yeah, you get a different perspective, you build different networks, you're just open to a lot more. You obviously get educated better. If I stayed in Wangaratta, I probably wasn't going to try that hard at school. I would have had everything pretty much handed to me pretty easily here.
Yeah. But you did, but it seems to did do pretty well at school because you did law and commerce, right?
Yeah, so that was a bit of a luck thing as well. So went to Scotch for the 6 years. At the end, I sort of wasn't that great of a student. I was sort of looking at like the high 60s sort of enter.
Right.
And then sort of come across Bond University, where you could get it all done faster. I probably didn't like the academic side that much. I just wanted to get through and start. I pretty much wanted to work and just either whatever that would be, and start wheeling and dealing. So I went to Bond, had to do some sort of degree. That's just what the family told you. You have to, go out and do something. You can't be nothing. So just in those last sort of 6 months of year 12, I met with Bond Uni, and the guy there said, oh, you're probably only going to get a commerce offering based on what the school thinks you're going to get for your enter school, which is based off your SACs and all that, which I probably wasn't that good at. So then I said, oh, well, look, I'll get a lot higher than that. And I'd worked out that I just studied at the end and just crammed it all in, and then ended up with like an 82 or something like that. Which they gave me a commerce offering at a 10% scholarship. And at the time, Bond was trying to grow their presence, and now it's a massive uni, but at the time they were trying to grow their presence, so they were basically giving away a lot of money to get students there through scholarships. And then they had these collegiate scholarship programs, so basically anyone from like Scotch or Melbourne Grammar or Xavier or wherever, like those sort of schools, PLC, would be able to get this 50% scholarship offering to go there. And when I was on the way up, driving up to Bond to do commerce, I got an email saying that I had commerce law at 50% scholarship. So I just obviously said yes, took it, and just, went from there and did all the subjects. I again, didn't excel in them. It was a bit of a P's get degrees mentality. Got all the subjects finished all on time, didn't defer any at all. And then, just finished at the end and had a job sort of teed up in Melbourne at a law firm. So every holidays I'd go and do a work experience there that Mum's husband basically organised through, he's an accountant in Melbourne, through his connections. And then, just took that opportunity, got along with everyone at that firm and worked there, did my articles there, worked there for 2 years.
And then what? So how did the stars align that you come back to the business here in Wang? And if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't doing that well.
No, it wasn't. I sort of probably wanted to change. I didn't really like the law. It was just a very repetitive sort of lifestyle in Melbourne that I'd sort of lived anyway. So you'd finish work, go home, go to the gym, whatever, back to work. Weekends, just go out. I could sort of see the writing of where you go. You'd get, start off on 45 grand. I think it went to like 65 or 70. Then you sort of tap out at like 100 unless you start going partner, and the guys were working like flat out to do that. Not that I thought at the time, hundreds, heaps. Like, how would you ever earn that? But then came back here, so sort of just wanted something different. Come back here, I was going to go overseas or do something different completely. Come back here in the meantime and help my brothers out because they were just under the pump a little bit. They offered me to work here, just gave me the same money that I was on there, and then I sort of just got into it a bit more. My middle brother Casey had always told me that Dad never had it as Dad. How Dad ran the family was like it's everyone's. It's not like mine or yours or this is whose it is. It's if you work the business, you own it. So there was my oldest brother and my middle brother who is in it now. They owned it at the time, so I was just an employee for them. And it sort of got to a point where they had a lot of debt in property. The business was failing as well, so the bank was putting pressure on. This is like probably higher interest rates than they are now. It worked if I came in, we spread the debt across 3 people, even though the oldest brother secured it all, but the business was funding a lot of it, and then tried to work out a solution from there, which, through a lot of blues and different sort of things we couldn't work out. And then in the end, it just seemed better that the oldest brother would we had 3 stores, so it sort of worked out if we split it at that point, you take what stock's in your store, they were probably all even values. Like there wouldn't have been much stock, maybe 100 at each store.
100 grand?
Yeah, worth it. Just like your floor stock a little bit out the back. So you take those 2, we'll take these. And then he took the property as well. In the end, I suppose, because he secured it, which I suppose, my middle brother probably missed out a bit on that, but, it is what it is. It wasn't really any of mine because I never worked for that side of thing, what they'd built. But, so I took over his share in the business with the Wangaratta store, and we had a Shepparton store. After that, we decided to close the Shepparton store, which my oldest brother technically owned because we owned that freehold. We found a tenant. He took it over. That was off our hands. And then Casey and I mortgaged our own houses, which we had a bit in. So I had a bit from inheritance and stuff from when Dad passed, and I didn't touch it. I was 6, hadn't touched it for a while, and sort of built up. So I'd done a few like little property deals myself that I'd gone all right in. And then we both mortgaged our houses and went and got in with the Ashley store.
So can you explain that? Because for people that have no idea what that means.
So sort of if you rewind a little bit back, what we had was that my brothers were importing since about 2008 direct containers mixed in with wholesale stuff out of Melbourne or manufactured out of Melbourne. Then we sort of were moving more to an all import model because your buying power was so much better.
Yeah.
You nearly couldn't afford to do it the old way because there was just no margin. You're going to send yourself broke. So they went into that importing model, and one of the suppliers was Ashley Furniture that we're buying off, which is an enormous American company. They claim that they're the biggest in the world, which they probably, I don't know who the measure would be, but they are a massive, enormous company in America, well organised, and they sort of started from nothing, basically back in the 40s and 50s, which is still owned by the same people. We were buying off them. The opportunity came up to open up what they have as their own home stores. So they're traditionally a manufacturer, but across America, they'd have about 500 of these home stores, which are all decked out, beautiful stores with their own product in it. We opened up one of them here, which was the first one in Australia, they taught us, we went over there, taught us a lot about, how to retail properly, not just out of a shed and a cold sort of warehouse, but how to, plaster the walls, polish the floor, light it, air condition it, set your furniture up nice, which we followed to a T, their whole sort of way they did it. So we opened up the Wangaratta store. It sort of started going all right. The Wodonga store as well. And then it's sort of the supply, there was just like supply issues and stuff like that as things happen, and sort of broke down a little bit our relationship with them. But then we since mended and stuff like that. But that they taught us a lot about that, but we probably put our own spin on it after, picked our own product, went back to our own suppliers. And
So with this Ashley store thing, were you paying like a franchise fee or something like that? Or
no, we actually never even signed contracts with them for that sort of thing. That wasn't really how they ran. It was more like you buy their furniture, you only stock their furniture. So we still kept half the store as McPhails and then had a new start, which was Ashley.
Yeah.
They would guide you on how to sell it and everything, which we're pretty big headed in how we want our things to be. So in a way, we probably didn't believe in them as much as now we would believe what they were selling, but we just couldn't believe that you could sell this much furniture out of one store. Whereas they would say that you could, arguably without speaking bad about them or anything, their product you might or you might not be able to. They've got a lot of stores in Australia, which, I don't know how they do, but I assume they do pretty well.
Yeah.
They're nice stores. It just probably wasn't the right mix for us up here.
So if someone was listening from home and they hadn't been to the store here, how could they imagine what it is like? Is it like a Nick Scali or a Harvey Norman or a Amart? Like what kind of...
It is probably, it's not really like a Harvey Norman. It's more of like a Scali to me is a bit of a pinnacle in Australia. I think they are like outside of King Furniture and those really high-end ones, but for that middle class of people, Scali probably do it really well, I think. Ours are a bit more condensed than their sort of stores and less contemporary, more rustic vibes.
Yeah.
And more of that Hampton vibe. So Scali's probably got a nice, clean, wide store, big spaces between groups and stuff like that. Ours is a bit closer in, but similar sort of idea, nice, clean, plastered walls, track lit and stuff like that. It's probably just a bit tighter and a bit like our style sort of caters for a lot more. So we've got, recliners, like bulky recliners up to, clean slickline lounges.
So now that we've got that context, when you mortgaged your houses, can you give us a sense of how big the business was then?
So back then we probably turned over only about $900 to $1 million in the one store for a year. That was at our probably absolute lowest
900 to, so say $1 million.
Yeah. Figures. So for instance, versus pre-GFC in like 06, 07, they were probably my brothers probably did between 3 stores, maybe up to 6, 7 million in their best time.
Wow.
I'm not really sure what mum and dad did because of pre-computers. It was all hand dockets. They probably didn't even know.
So it went from 6 or 7 million down.
Yeah, it went right down. Like it was not in a good place.
Is that because of the debt kind of crippled the business? Is that?
Yeah, I would say that. Casey would probably say that. Yeah, there was a lot of money taken out of the business to fund these debts. Interest rates then were, people think they're tough now. They were like, we're paying like 8%.
Yeah.
On a variable, which was, probably that was just what you expected to pay. It's just.
Yeah.
So you had a $4 million out. There was just probably some dealings there that weren't probably beneficial for the business, or they were. Then the GFC happened, turnover dropped, and then it made it too hard. So
then you do this thing like where you mortgage it to kind of like save it, say.
Yeah. Wasn't probably to save it, was more to have another life. Like I was only probably 25 at the time. What was I going to do? I was either going to go work for someone or have a crack and dig in.
So what did you do? How did you dig in?
Well, yeah, we went and mortgaged the houses and then rebuilt the thing, didn't get paid. So used the mortgage that we lent to the company and just repaid ourselves the loan repayment on that. So you weren't physically getting paid. Like a lot of weeks you wouldn't pay yourself. You'd have to pay the staff or whatever, just so you didn't fall behind. Your bills are stretching out. It was pretty tough at that point because you'd spent all this money on these fit outs and done it all properly, but you weren't getting a lot in. Your bills, we had a lot of good local suppliers, like a mate has a trucking business. You'd push him out to 3 months, they ring you, they want their money. You got to try and work it out. They'd still keep supplying. It was probably like based on old relationships. Like Dad and that trucking company's great-grandfather worked together when they were in trucking together, So it was like these long built-out relationships that you had that you probably relied on at these tough times where they'd credit you and you eventually get on top of it.
So then what was the catalyst? Like, so we're sitting here, if you're not watching, we're sitting here in this gigantic factory in this boardroom that overlooks the floor, but then the other side, it's got like a huge yard, looks back out towards Wangaratta.
Yeah.
Like, how do you go from that to this in just in a few years?
Well, I would say, Dan, one thing, just COVID. COVID was probably bad for some, but unbelievable for us, which we didn't obviously see coming. So we did the whole remortgage and opened up the Wodonga store, picked up a homewares brand, just kept battling. Like, it was an everyday battle. So your turnover was 250,000 a month. We got it up to. Your break even might have been 280. So you're treading water, like some months you'd make a bit of profit. Overall, you're probably making a loss. Well, we were for a couple of years. So it was, you could tell you were just basing off your bank mortgage. You're going broke slowly. At that point, we got rid of that Ashley brand and I just went back over to China with my brother. We went to the fairs, rebought, established the old relationships, bought what we think would sell better. It started selling better. So we're on like 10% growth a month. Then COVID happened. So the last time we went to China was so COVID was 2020. We went to China in September 2019. We had the Guangzhou show booked for March 2020, but COVID happened, so we just cancelled all that. That was our last opportunity, and that was our second time to China as McPhails Furniture again. So we'd set up just enough of the old supply lines to be right to go into COVID, not knowing that COVID was going to happen, of course. So we just had that in our back pocket. Then COVID happened. We just gave up. At that point, at the very start of COVID, we just looked at each other and said, that's it. We'd had our 10% growth. We're starting to come back. We're not going into that hard time again. Went and bought a log splitter. Got organised jobs for all our staff, truck drivers. That we only had probably 5 staff at the time to go work up in farms in central New South Wales or whatever. Bought a log splitter. Thought we're just going to go cut wood and make ends meet, basically, to get through. At that point, there was that 2 weeks where it was just full lockdown. No one knew what was going on.
Yep.
I went back into the store just by myself and would just put stuff up on Marketplace to sellers just pick up only or whatever, or we could just drop it to your house, like whatever I could, because I knew we thought we were going to go close down. Didn't really know what was happening, just needed to sell the stock off as quick as we could. I noticed that stuff was just selling quick. Like, you put a mirror up, you'd have 5 in stock, they'd be all gone in a day. Or like a couch. People were just buying like crazy straight away, because you saw the rush on the supermarkets, the butchers. Everyone was out of stock. Everyone was just buying whatever they could, just spend money. So when I realised that, I just said to the guys that we had that we probably actually had more stuff than that, maybe 8. I said, we got to get in there and start. So it sort of opened up. We're a lot luckier than Melbourne had. We were a lot freer up here, and we'd just go into the store. You could work from home because we were a warehouse, so we were a freight company. We would work and get the deliveries out, and we still had containers coming in and stuff like that of furniture, so you couldn't just leave them there. You had to unload them and get the container back because of the demurrage and all that. We got everyone in and then just started pumping the phones and the Facebook. Everyone was putting up on their own personal marketplace whatever you could sell. And it just took off. And at that point, I was speaking to another mate that's in the furniture game, and he does outdoor online. I said, mate, I'm buying containers. I had about 100 containers on order within a month. And he's saying, you're mad, mate, because everyone thought it was all gonna come back and stop. It lasted 2 years, this sort of boom time. And I had these 100 containers, so we went from doing like a $200,000 a month to a $700,000 from like March to April was 700. That's just how quick it went. And then May was a 700. And then I ran out of stock. So all my warehouse stock, everyone needed it right now. So we just said yes to everything that we could get out and just work all weekend, every day. Because one, you had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And two, I just remembered how hard it was whenever you could get a sale. If you could get a 10 grand sale, that was like unbelievable back, pre-COVID. Now they're pretty common, but you still can't, you don't want to throw them away because you remember how bad it is when you're trying to just get whatever you can. Even $500 is great.
Yeah. So you run out of stock, then was there anything particular you do on Facebook? Just first quick on that. Was it just like literally just putting it up on Marketplace and just being like this? They weren't like aggressively marketing or anything?
I wasn't really aggressively marketing. Well, it would probably be considered aggressive at the time, but compared to what I do now, no. It would be like you'd put up a post of under 40 pictures on your page. So we had maybe 10,000 followers at that time. Would put up a post of pictures, put the pricing in. It's available, put $1,000 boost on it for over the audience of, Wangaratta, Northeast Victoria. It would go well. People would comment. You'd be talking to people all night, sitting at home. My wife would, crack it with me. You're sitting on the phone all night, talking to people. I had a newborn at home. But you sort of had to do it, or else you didn't know when it was going to stop. So you wanted to take whatever you could get. So I would pump that $1,000 on that. Now would probably push, you could push 30,000 to a post for 7 days, whatever whatever it works out to be that you need. And it just would turn into sales like that quick. So I sort of base it on if I look at turnover, industry average about 7% spend on marketing. I just 7%. If you spent 70 grand, you're going to get $1 million.
Yeah. Right.
Sort of just work like that.
Yeah, right. So you just kind of took what is already working in other businesses and you just thought, I'll just
it sort of just worked a few times and then I just kept doing it. And we also, a big thing we did was we did a couple of giveaways where, because I was spending like $1,000 initially and $5,000 on a post or whatever. I thought, well, if I give away $5,000 of furniture and do a post and share it, it'll get the same reach from people sharing to want to win the competition. Rather than pay Facebook, you give someone the $5,000 in furniture. So I did that, and then I went up to like 25,000 likes, and then probably did 3 of those comps, and then got to 100,000 followers. Now they sort of increase about 1,000 a month, but we stopped doing those competitions because we started getting massive scams. Like people would say they've won, and then all these fake pages would come up because it would have 10,000 likes and comments on a post. Yeah, people would get the scam started coming, and Facebook wouldn't give us a blue tick.
Yeah, right.
So we couldn't prove that it was us or not us. Like people would have to go through our page and see the history, I suppose, to know that it was real, but they wouldn't. And then it got too hard, and then people would start ghosting your page. So Facebook have this thing where, when you're on it and you're scrolling and it says, I don't want to see this.
Yeah.
If you click that enough times, it ghosts someone. So then your posts don't go to anyone, even if you pay to them. So it makes it look like you're spamming. So right. If people do that to your page, which is when you run competitions and you just keep coming up, it gets annoying for people. They'll say, I don't want to see this. And then enough people say they don't want to see it, it can ghost you. And you go into ghost mode for like 2 weeks.
So even though you're paying for ads, no one's seeing it.
Yeah, well, you got to pay more.
Yeah.
Because Facebook's algorithm doesn't want you to do it.
It's like a dark pool.
Yeah.
You just keep throwing the money in.
It took us a while to work that out. Where after a comp, everything would just stop. And then we'd start getting real nervous. It's all changed. Yeah. Facebook changes a lot of things a lot of the time.
Yeah. So you would be doing, like, the majority of your leads, at least, were coming through Facebook and all that during COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say 95%.
Yeah. And then, so you ran out of stock. You obviously had to get a lot more, and you had 100 containers on order.
Yeah. So they took a lot long. It used to be like a 3-month rule of thumb, order, 2 months production, month on the water here.
Yeah.
It pushed out, like some containers we only just got now were like from 14 months ago orders.
Oh, wow.
So stock holding now is a little bit not right. We're really deep in stock because we got, old orders that have
Rocking
just
up.
finished. Yeah. Which I ordered at the time because, it was booming. Like if I had the stock there, then I would have sold it. Whatever you had, it was that easy to sell.
Yeah. Do you have a risk now then, as like COVID kind of finally seems to be rolling off for most folks? Do you have a concern that you have too much stock, or you're going to have too much stock?
I definitely have too much stock now, but it's probably not a concern because I paid for a lot of it. Right. So initially, like say we had $1 million, just figures pulling out, $1 million of stock, we probably owed $1 million on it back then through finance. Now say if you have 5 million of stock, you might only owe $1 million on it. Yeah. So your actual holding, you got a lot of equity in your stock. So if I've turned off the orders a little bit, when probably you go down from, this time last year was the worst ever. We had 150 containers a month for 2 months. That's a lot. Yeah. Now we're probably down to 10 to 30 a month.
Yeah, right. So what did your revenue get up to then at the peak of all this?
The absolute highest we hit was the 22 million for a year, a financial year, which was the last one. Yeah. So it sort of went from maybe like 2 to 10 to 22.
Wow.
Yeah.
And were you profitable that time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
the thing with selling is, which is what Dad always said, is if you're a tradie and you're charging out by the hour or whatever, you can only charge out 24 hours a day. That's the most you can actually do.
Yep.
Selling, you can sell whatever you want 1,000 times a day and you make the money.
Yep.
But if you're not selling, you're still there putting the time. Like when it was quiet, it sort of goes both ways. Like people could say, oh, well, it's almost like people look at it as being unfair or whatever. You make heaps of money. Whereas like when it's quiet, you can't just go and charge your time out.
Yeah.
If you're not selling anything, you're not making anything. But when you are selling, you got to take full advantage of that and
make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
Right?
So now if it goes into a quiet time, that's probably not too bad. We can, obviously I don't want that to happen. I don't want to keep selling heaps and growing, but we can probably get our systems a bit better and spend a bit more time on that, waiting for the next good time, which I don't think is that far away.
Yeah. So one of the stats that I heard was that you guys, because you exploded so quickly, you had to get all the you had to basically look around Wangaratta, which is a big regional kind of town, city, if you like.
Yeah, about 25,000 people.
Yeah. You had to basically find every shed that you possibly could. And we just went for a drive before, and you basically like, lease that.
Yeah.
bought that, lease that, like all around town.
Yeah. So he made quick moves. Well, sort of maybe about 6 months ahead of the game. So obviously I worked out it started early. I bought early. So we got a lot of our initial supply came early, and with that you make a lot of money.
Yep.
Based on that, which at the time you can either choose to pocket or reinvest it. We reinvested basically every cent. We still haven't bought much. We don't pay ourselves stupid wages. We bought a shed that we thought would be our warehouse, which was 4,000 meters, going from basically no warehouse just out the back of the shop to 4,000. Soon worked out within 3 months that it was way too small, and then we'd just pick up, ring anyone that we knew that we thought had a shed and say, I need to borrow this. I need to what deal can we do? We're paying stupid rent on some stuff too. People, I would do it too to them, like if they've got someone desperate, they knew anyone that owned property in Wang knew we wanted it and we were desperate.
Yep.
Or else we couldn't store the stuff. So it was versus either leave it in the container and pay 150-day detention.
What does that cost you?
So we had one detention bill for a month. Over that period, we were using the rail to bring up the furniture, and it was just everything was a little bit clunky.
Yep.
Just because our volume grew from 10 containers to 150, it's who's going to be able to manage that? Like we're not in Melbourne, you can't just ring up any trucking company or whatever.
Yeah.
We had a detention bill of like 150,000 there for a month. was just for nothing. Like that just goes straight overseas to the shippers. Just it was the worst having to pay that down.
So you may as well go and get a shed.
Yeah, so if you go and pay, $5,000 a month for a shed or whatever, even if it's no good, you just deal with it. And then we just picked up a lot of staff at the time to, manage that.
You said to me in a previous chat we had that you said that like one of the big parts of business and everything that you do is like the property value. So like the operating business sits on a property and so on and so forth. Can you talk to us about how you think about that? Like how you think about property as a vehicle for like wealth creation?
Well, say this furniture I've got here, this table, we buy that. The only reason someone will give me money for that is if they take that table with them and then give me the money.
So it becomes theirs? Yeah,
it becomes theirs. Property is the only thing the bank will give you money on, but you still own. So they'll pay you for it, but you still own it. So you get fake. It's almost, well, it's not fake, but it's you buy a property pre-COVID. They all went up heaps. So you bought something for 200,000, all of a sudden it's valued at 400. You've technically made that 200 without selling the property or passing it on because the bank will give you the extra 200. With that equity, you go and buy something else, it does the same thing. So eventually you'll buy like 5 properties, they've all gone up. Yeah, you have a lot of debt. You just have to be able to service them. If you can't service them, you just sell 3 of them and then you own the 2 outright that you initially bought, which you're never going to pay off anyway.
Well, you have to buy it right in that strategy, right? And you have to be mindful of leverage.
Yeah, but at that time in COVID, you could buy anything. It was going to go up anywhere in Australia. You were going to make money. You just had to buy it. The first ones we had to buy, the hardest thing is getting that initial deposit because you have to buy one with an initial deposit. So we got this land where we are now was pretty cheap at the time because everyone, again, didn't want to buy. We actually had signed a contract on a farm that we thought on the edge of town for 30 acres just to, do the old wood cutting game and stuff. Yeah. And it took a month and we rang up the agent and we said, has the other person signed that contract yet? And they was screwing around with it and they hadn't signed. And I said, oh, well, we don't want it anymore. Give us the deposit back. And then we had this block of industrial land. And we used that same deposit and bought this. And that gave us our first equity. So as we'd sold off our stock, we had cash in the bank in stock value rather than sitting in stock, it was in cash. So we bought the land with that cash. Then that property got it revalued again within a year to buy the other one. So it went up, say we pushed it up to 500 or 600, I can't really remember, which gave us an equity position. Plus we saved another bit of cash to buy another shed for 2.5 million and then borrowed like maybe 2 million of it. So we might have had a 500,000. I'm just pulling numbers out, but roughly like 500,000 plus the security of the block that we owned outright gave us enough to the bank to lend us the 2 million and the business turnover and stuff like that. And then with that, it went up again. Both of them go up. We bought, what did we do then? We bought another place in Dinner Plain as well, like a holiday house, and then it doubled. Which we sold that and then used cash from that to help start funding to build this shed that we're in now, which was a $6 million buy at the time. Yeah.
And now I imagine it'd be worth a lot
more.
The
builder, when we were coming to finish, said, do you want to build the same one? It'd be 8.
Yeah, right.
That's in steel out there. Yeah, so what we stuffed around. We couldn't get the money at the start. We stuffed around. The bank wasn't confident yet in our, everyone thought the figures were just a blip in the graph. I had to get really good 2 years of good growth and trading to give to the bank, and we were reporting nearly weekly to the bank what we were doing. So we're going to sign in February. They were like, oh, let's think about it a bit. I think the build cost was like 5.3 then. And then by the time we signed in October, it had gone up to 6.
Wow.
And that was just things, you just had to cop that at the time. Like, what are you going to do? Argue about it and then not build it, or, stuff around longer. And then we're under a super amount of pressure with having 21 warehouses. Like, we were getting burnt out quick. Staff were getting burnt out.
Yeah, they're hot, small. Well, they're small by warehouse standards. By this standard, they're small, but
there was just so much labor intensiveness. Yeah. And then you're having problems. Then that was that was tough, but it was all right because you were making money and, you know, you could see the light at the end.
So basically you took, like, that's the original deposit that you were going to put on that wood shop and land.
Yeah.
And the business took off, so you had that kind of float of cash that would normally be buying inventory sitting there that you used as a bigger deposit to then buy a place and then buy a place and then buy a place and then buy a place. And then you ended up here.
Yeah. And then the bank also funded the next inventory coming in. So we used up inventory cash, but you're making more as well because you're selling so much so quickly. You're able to keep buying the inventory at the same time. And the inventory was taking a lot longer to come through than usual. So it gave you more time to try and buy it. So it took, I suppose you'd say at the time it didn't feel risky because we'd already been nearly broke. What was the worst that was going to happen? You go broke.
Yeah.
Really? You're not going to die. You're going to just go broke and go without again.
Yeah, which is where you already were going.
So what difference does it make? Lose your house, oh well, go rent, start again.
Yeah. I love that attitude because a lot of people think about like losing money and they think about it like it is life or death when it's really not. Like you just go live with your family.
Having said that now, I wouldn't probably like to lose too much now because I quite like having it.
Yeah.
Like it, yeah. It probably does make you happier to an extent. Like when you don't have it, everything's tough.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is.
Life's not fun, but you can still live. You don't die.
Once you get to a certain level, right? That's what the study shows, that once you get to a certain level of income or wealth.
Yeah. Well, that's like the question too, is if, you know, we've obviously explored expanding.
Yeah.
But the pressure of, you know, going there, I'd have to open up another shop in, say, we'd probably look at Northern Sydney or, you know, Geelong area or somewhere far enough away where it's a new customer.
Yep.
But you're going to have to go there and run it. There's a lot of pressure. You got to set it up. Do you really want that? Or, you're going to make a lot more money, but how much do you need at that point, you know?
Yeah. Furniture's lovely. We went through the store and the way you presented everything was lovely. It's really cool to see a place like this in a regional town. Well, as we were driving around, we were saying how basically, you know, regional towns benefited in a massive way, not just your business, but everything.
Yeah.
And also the way you thought about marketing the business as well was really creative, and the attention to detail in the shop was like second to none. And it's funny how those little things compound to make a huge difference by the end. Yeah,
well, that's right. So, for example, just cushions being neat on a couch. You got to have everything in there because it's not that. I suppose, what is it? It's people will see it if it's out of place, but if it's in place, they don't notice it. But if it's out, they do notice it. You know, like if you see dirtiness, you notice it, and then you think the whole place, it probably brings you down.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's all in place, you don't think of it either way, but you don't think negatively.
Yeah, I remember there's if you show a bunch of math equations on really simple math equations on a PowerPoint, if you have 10 of them and one of them's wrong, everyone just automatically notices the one that's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of same bias that we have in our head. Yeah,
it's just have it all as right as you can, and then well, it just has to be right. Like we're super strict on that.
Yeah. So how about then, so I mentioned before about inventory over, flowing over. Do you ever think about, so that was worst cases, like the business doesn't succeed and, wherever you're going to go, you're going to end up anyway. Mm. Do you now think about the downside more, that you've got the business to where it is and you've got the assets to where they are, all the property and that? Do you now think more about the risk and the downside?
To be honest, it sounds cliche, but you probably think more of the risk to your staff in a way, because we've got some pretty high paid managers now and good people that have, I suppose, trusted us to, back them. If they lose their job, they'll get another job somewhere else, but would it be as good? Or, it just puts a lot of pressure on them.
Yep.
So with those good staff that we got that have backed us through this tough time, it would be hard for it to ruin it for them.
Yeah.
The stock position we're in now, it'd have to go pretty bad, really bad for it to hurt, because we just got a lot of business debt out. We have got a lot of property debt, but having said that, I try and keep property in stock and I trade it. So I'm not afraid to, if someone wants to buy something off me and pay more than I paid for it, it is what it is, like I'm a trader. I'm not, sentimental to that property. I need to keep it and keep it and keep it. I'll trade it off and buy and sell, because you can always just buy another one again. You might have to pay more or whatever, but at the time, if you need the cash, you got to sell. So we've sold a few joints, like for instance a dinner plane joint. It was good going up to the snow and stuff like that, but there was good coin in it. Sell it, rent a joint. You make enough out of it. How many times are you going to go up there that
it justifies that? Yeah,
exactly, and then it goes into something else. So
yeah. So how about like things like, it's something that I haven't asked you today, is like just about like culture and how you think about staff and like building that and fostering like talent being a really key input to every business. Yeah,
well, so from the background of where we were, when we'd just sit out the back basically smoking darts, drinking coffees, like doing absolutely nothing when it was horrible. That culture was terrible.
Yeah.
At the time you probably think it's all right because you're doing nothing and
what else
it's just like a loser sort of mentality. Now that we've got into where we are and everyone's sort of go around us, the staff are excited. We've got some good managers that, want quality and they see it as a career, it's more exciting. So you want to respect that and cherish that. So when you have staff that come in that try and upset that or, want to wreck your culture or want to be lazy or, doing it, I just can't tolerate it. And it does probably set me off, but I've moved aside to get an HR company to do that. So I suppose they could filter what I would say. But, there's a lot of people want to have a go and there's a lot of people that probably don't or want a free ride. So we just try and keep that, if you can identify that or normally the group mentality will sort of push that out anyway now. But yeah, we grew so quick. You did have a lot of people that, probably wanted to have a lend or whatnot. Like I'd have blokes that, they probably should have went on a truck run, left at 6 a.m. They ring you at 8:30 saying, no, I can't do it. You got, 20 customers down there. That means one of your other staff has to go and ring them all and get abused by them. So he's put pressure on them. I got to get in the truck myself and drive down there because I've got no one else. Like they let you down. They let the whole team down a lot you can see it once or twice. It happens, they're sick or something else happens. But, if it's every week, you can't have that. They're having a lend.
Yeah. Someone said to me last week, it sounds harsh, but it's almost like you gotta be slow to hire, quick to fire. Just because that one person can drag down the entire team. And I've had that experience.
Yeah. Well, we were the opposite at the time. You needed people. And so you'd put up with a lot. But now as it gets tighter, sales are slowly dropping and stuff as it's coming back with interest rates and stuff. The people that are there, they need to perform because everyone got massive wage increases. Like we went to interest rate meetings with the NAB about it and they're saying, like wage growth and all that. And I said, everyone I speak to in Wang has gone from a 40 grand salary to a 70.
Yeah.
Like if you're not asking for it or you're not changing jobs, well, that's basically your own problem. But the wage growth was there.
Yeah.
Like we were, I think I was talking to you about, like we're giving people pay rises to come join us just to get them. But then they would think, I suppose, that didn't come with more responsibility. You get a pay rise, but the responsibility sort of increases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which it is what it is.
Yeah. And how much of so you're like Temple and Webster, right? Which is like fully online.
Yeah.
And then you got like Scalia has the stores. How much of your revenue comes from online sales?
About 20% directly off the website would be what we'd be doing at the moment. However, very hard to manage what actually comes generated from their website. Like we have a lot of hits on it.
But people want to see it.
Yeah. I showed you our delivery schedule of like where we go. Like not all those people who come into store, they're talking to us on Facebook or through our website chat line, which will go to all the sales staff phone where they'll reply individually at night. So they're commissioned to do that. If they don't want to do it, well, they'll miss out on sales. But you have that sweet spot at night, particularly on Sunday nights. mum and dad are at home, they've had a couple of glasses of wine, like, you're all guilty of it. And then you buy stuff online.
Yeah, you do.
And you've got to close it at that point. If you close it, like we used to do a lot of that, if you say, I'll call you back on Monday morning or whatever, you know, they're half hungover and they regret it. If they've already closed it, then you commit and you buy it. Yeah. And you actually don't regret it once you have, but if you get the option later, you probably do change your mind.
Yeah. So you deliver up to 1,500 Ks away from the store, which is incredible reach.
Yeah.
For $59, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
How did the economics of that work? Like, how do you?
Wow, that was like another whole sort of story. So we identified that we wanted to sell more. So my brother and I'd go on these hunting trips up to central New South Wales, and then we'd come back and we stopped in the stores and said, "Oh, how about you buy our stuff instead of buying the wholesale stuff out of Sydney or Melbourne or wherever, and we'll deliver it to you." And a few of them said yes. We'll give it a go. But we worked out they're buying like one lounge at absolute no margin. We'll deliver it to them or direct to the customer, and then they'll just clean up on the margin, and they'd only buy one. So it works if you bought a truckload, it'd be worth doing it at that margin, but we'll just lose the money on that. So any problems, we'd have to go and fix it too ourselves, like the store wouldn't. So they were just getting basically the cream for not really doing anything. So then we just thought, why don't we just sell it direct to the customer? And I had another mate that was doing it online, and that same guy that does the outdoor, he taught me a lot about that, which we weren't even mates. I just saw his truck driving along, rang him up, and he's just a nice bloke, sort of pretty open. Yeah, there's enough room in it for everyone. He just said, I just do it. So if you get it, so for instance, the way it works, like people think, I don't know how, they just don't believe us that we do it or whatever. So initially we probably did ourselves in on a few drops. So you go to Mildura, you'd only have one thing. It obviously costs you more, but you still got a sale. So you have your margin in your sale, and they're sales that you would never have got. So for instance, someone comes in and spends 10 grand in Wang, it's easy, you just drop it off around the corner. But if they're 10 grand in Mildura, would you drive a day to get there and drop it off and drive back to get the 10 grand sale? Well, you probably would. But then you do that and you add 10 deliveries there and it's a full truck. Well, it's not that much different. Like, it's just a wage and some petrol. Yeah. We initially you had to have 1 or 2 trucks to run the business as it was, which we just would use those trucks. So you're only actually paying petrol and wages. And most of the time, my brother and I are doing it ourselves. For instance, he's gone up north of Burke today on a delivery run. So his time really isn't costing us anything.
How far's Burke from here?
Oh, it'd have to be like 900 Ks. I think he's 1,000 Ks away. It's in Gonia, a station up there. Then he comes back down through Cobar and Hillston.
Interesting. Wow, it's a long way to go to deliver furniture.
I think he likes those runs though. He reckons he doesn't even turn the radio on, just sits there in silence. Peace. They are fun though. Doing the truck runs are good. Like, to be honest, I really don't mind them. Yeah. Chuck your high vis on. Yeah. I only just cut my mullet off because I was doing a lot before Christmas. So it's nice you rock up and it's funny how people talk to you when you rock up in high vis and they don't know you own it. Yeah. How rude, or some people are really nice, some people are rude, but you're a different person sometimes like that.
If you got a mullet and you're rocking up and...
Well, that's why I kept it, because if there was any complaint, I'm just the driver, mate. I should take that to customer care, but...
It's great. You do things like here you said you've got like the diesel tanks out there. Yeah. And you fitted out the trucks with bigger tanks so you don't have to fill up. Yeah. When you go past Sydney or something like that, you can drive all the way up and back. Yeah, just little things like that. So the diesel was, when the price went up with the war and stuff, I just got my hands on a diesel tank just mainly for convenience, but it ended up paying for itself in 2 months because I'd bought like diesel, so it was $1.30 back then, and then it went to $2 on the street or $2.20. I'd bought 15,000 litres at that, and so the difference would the tank cost us maybe 25,000. So it was just all a lot of good timing, things like that, where the tank paid for itself after 2 or 3 months. And now we've just got the full convenience of it. We're still buying our diesel cheaper overall. And it just makes the whole sort of like another reinvestment. Like they're bites that I think other people would say,
oh, why would you bother doing that? You know, or go out and buy Malibu instead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas we went and bought a diesel tank, like how boring.
Yeah. I've got one final question for you, but if people wanted to find out more, they could head to McPhails, the website, Facebook page, anything like that, and see some of the furniture. I think I'm going to get one of your TV units, by the way.
Yeah,
right. But people can go there. That's probably the best place to go, right?
Yeah. So on the website, there's a box that if it says talk to us, if you click on that, it actually goes to about 10 people's phone as a message. So everyone sort of knows about, you know, it's not an auto-generated message or anything. So you could go on there, or Facebook's always probably the main key where we post everything up that we're really pushing or selling to get the best deal.
So you occasionally drive the trucks, you jump down to the store on the weekend.
Yeah.
You obviously do a lot of like the team stuff. You got strategy. You design a lot of the furniture as well.
So we do a lot of our own. Now that we can buy enough, we design a lot of our own.
Yeah. Marketing.
Yeah.
Some customer service, stuff like this.
I'm probably the worst at customer service.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you, okay, so this is just my question to you, right? This is a multi-million-dollar business, like super impressive business. How do you find any time to have work-life balance?
We don't. That's only, so basically I've been trying to do this thing. So we went away from my brother, who's my partner, his 50th last week on the Gold Coast as a big family holiday. Then after that, I haven't had a drink since then till now. So that's the first time I've gone for a few runs. Mm-hmm. I probably stacked on 25 kilos in the last 2 years. Would smoke every night, drink every night, like a bottle of red plus 2 bottles of scotch a week. So seriously unhealthy. High blood pressure pills, like at 32 I am, and on the doctor said I got blood pressure of a 60-year-old. So all these things were obviously compounding pretty bad with a lot of stress. So yeah, it's only real, like I've been aware of it in the last 6 months, but it's just now that we've got this new warehouse, things have got a little bit easier and it's all a bit more manageable. It's probably a bit of time to focus on the work life now. But you know, like it was 3 years. Oh, there's a lot longer of tough times, but 3 years of really full on. I've got a really good wife that sort of supports us and backs me in, so understands what our position is, and the fruits of where we sort of want to get, you know, like she's got a 300 series Sahara sitting down there. We've got a nice house in town. It's a lot better than where we were 5 years ago, but that's the other thing. If you push again to another store, do you want to go through is it worth going through all that, or are you just happy, you know, and get a Porsche or a Ferrari? Like, I don't know if I care about that. I'm just happy to have what we've sort of got and then start focusing on that work life. We've got another child on the way. So
congrats.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that's where you'd start focusing. You get your systems in place and then start trying to run it a bit better. But you always have that, you know, every big place that you see, you probably interviewed plenty. They all started off with nothing, and you know, someone's gone through something to get there. I just went through, you know, heaps of alcohol, smokes and fat, basically. But yeah, it's time to work on that, I suppose. Yeah,
well, great, mate. Well, congratulations on everything you guys have done.
Yeah, thanks.
Super impressive. You're super candid with everything. You're really insightful. I know there's heaps of stuff that we would love to say, but probably better off not said on air around the strategies that you use with the business. And I just think it's impressive about what you do, everything that you've put together here. If you could see it in Wangaratta right now, if you're watching the video, you'll get to see it. But incredible stuff. So all the best with the business, and thanks for making the time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming up.